All right, let's get started. All right, so guys, I wanted to have Chelsie on from CFO Share. I know the title of our actual meeting today was preparing for your exit upon after acquiring your business. The reason I use that title is because I know a lot of times we talk about the acquisition process. Um, and how to actually go about acquiring a business. We spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time with you guys looking at businesses, evaluating them, coming up with reasonable offers, helping you craft offers for the business. But that's kind of like the beginning of the process, or the beginning of your life as a business owner. We've had Brian on from our ACE team that talks about post-acquisition integration, and what is involved there in order to build a more valuable business. But I wanted to have Chelsie come on from CFO Share. She's from a firm, basically fractional CFO firm, and in my opinion, probably one of the key ways to build value upon exit, which you should always be thinking about when you're buying a business. One of the key ways to do that is by preparing your books the right way, running your business based on your budgets, performance management, KPIs, projections, blah, blah, all the boring finance stuff that probably we don't expose you guys to enough from that standpoint. But really just having a valuable member of the team at the CFO level to help you manage and run the business, and run all the different potential scenarios. Because one thing I've seen with a lot of these smaller businesses, sometimes you throw a bookkeeper in there and you think that that's enough. Yeah, it might be enough for your transactional accounting needs to record a sale, or to record you paying a bill, but that's not necessarily going to help you run the business. You need to have financial management systems in place, controls in place, understanding why those are important. And because ultimately at the end of the day, when you go to sell that business to a larger buyer, if you have those systems in place and those controls in place, that business is ultimately worth a lot more to that buyer than someone who's just used a bookkeeper over that time period. Reason being is they see the business as having less risk. It's been professionally managed from a financial level, from a financial standpoint. That hasn't been neglected. They can trust the numbers from that standpoint, which lowers the risk from that standpoint. So I want to have Chelsie kind of jump on, talk about CFO Share, what they do, how you guys may be able to take advantage of that once you've acquired your business. And I think having a CFO partner is one of the most useful. I'd say it actually is probably your number two, your right-hand person, is what I'm trying to say. I've told you guys, some of you guys know my background. I was a CFO at one point, so I always have a biasness towards that. But I think having her here and kind of discussing it and talking about some ways to increase the value of that business upon exit is very useful to you guys at this point in the cycle. Kind of gives you a bigger overview, a longer term overview of what you're trying to accomplish and how to get there. So Chelsie, welcome. I don't know. We didn't really have a game plan going in for this.
No, that's totally fine.
If there's something you want to throw up there, that's fine, or we can just discuss.
Yeah.
We can kind of go.
Let's see. I can get this on here. You guys will see kind of my logo. There we go. All right. Well, thanks, Rich. I appreciate you inviting me, and thanks everyone for being here during a week of the year where time doesn't really exist and we consist on nothing but cookies and leftovers. So thanks for hanging in there. As Rich alluded to, I'm Chelsie from CFO Share. So CFO Share is an outsourced finance and accounting department. What makes us a little bit different in the marketplace from other outsourced finance and accounting groups is that we work as a team of experts as opposed to just a single 1099. So all of our employees are W-2s within our organization, and we work as a team. So for example, my background is in accounting and in agriculture. We're here in Colorado. If some of our cannabis clients have a question, but I'm not necessarily on that engagement, one of my teammates can come to me and ask a question about something that would be pertinent to my expertise that then I can go and help them with. And that's helpful in the sense that we're able to rely on each other and then not have to have this additional like billable hours kind of like schedule happening. With that team approach, we have every kind of position that you would expect in the back office of a corporation. So think about your accounting department is consistent of bookkeepers, accountants, and controllers. And then on your finance side, you've got financial analysts, financial managers, director of finance, and CFOs. All of those positions are something that we have on our team available as a team to our customers. Hopefully that makes sense, but I can answer some questions after this. What I've displayed here is kind of all of our services, kind of in a nutshell of what we offer. So I alluded to both finance and accounting. They're two very distinct operations, but they work very closely with one another. And so we do offer our services in bookkeeping. We do offer our services in M&A, due diligence, QOE, making sure books are cleaned up. That happens more often than not, where someone will come to us and say, I've been doing the books, but it's just me and a buddy who started our business and they're probably not accurate. Can you clean them up? Yep, absolutely no problem. On an annual side, going through your assisting with audits, we don't actually perform audits, but we can go into your annual budgeting. And then on a monthly basis, that strategy that is also necessary for young companies to make sure that you're hitting your KPIs, you're hitting your goals. And if you're not hitting those things, why are we not hitting those things? So that's kind of us in a nutshell. On this next slide, if I can get it to go, there we go. Here is a more comprehensive list of what we are offering. So in terms of accounting services, I've kind of listed it all out there, financial planning and analytics, and of course that CFO level of service. Something that's probably not listed on here is a pricing analysis. This comes into more into play for our clients who have a consumer product that they take to market, and determining whether or not, any sort of pricing tactics that they have are working. My email is listed on there. You'll note that my name is spelled a little bit funky. Thanks, Mom. So I have it up there. And even though we're a .org, we are a for-profit business. Someone else owns the .com version and won't sell it to us for anything less than $100,000. So we will remain with .org. We do offer ourselves to clients who are in the not-for-profit space. We're industry agnostic in terms of who we work with. And because of that, all of our consultants on our team have a wide range of industry experience, which is really helpful as well. So with that, that's kind of my spiel in a nutshell. I can open it up to questions, comments. Maybe you can tell me what your favorite holiday cookie was thus far, what's still left in your coffers and what you ate first.
Well, why don't we start with Michael, you raised your hand already. Okay, go ahead.
First off, it's chocolate chip cookies, but you got to add a symphony bar to the mix. Just saying.
Yes,
that's what you do. Okay, so yeah, just a question on that: the new product or service modeling, or rather, the pricing side of it. Those might be two separate things. How are you determining what that looks like, and are you actually doing? Because that to me starts dancing a bit on the marketing side of things. So just curious what approach you take.
Yeah, think about it like a pro forma in the sense that if you have a new product or service, you want to see if it's going to be viable, not necessarily in the market itself, but based upon what already exists in the market and how likely people are to pay for it. And so if you just are an entrepreneur and you have a new business idea, you're going to create a 5-year projection as to what that business is going to do. And you can do the same thing with a new product or service offering.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a quick start. So let's talk a little bit about kind of like engaging CFO Share. So let's just say we go out, we buy this company, obviously acquire as at some level, whether it be through capital infusion, whether it's through kind of like, and Chelsea, forgive me, I probably didn't discuss kind of like our ACE, our ACE consulting service that we also offer our AEs which is really more or less geared towards post-acquisition integration. And part of that offering is to help them with the hiring, to help them with implementing SOPs, writing, job descriptions, really kind of helping build the infrastructure of the company initially. And so within that process, we like to implement, regular, what I would call leadership meetings amongst the operations team, the HR team, the, finance team, the sales team or what have you. So we like to implement regular like meetings of a leadership. And of course, obviously, if someone was to engage CFO Share, you're basically your CFO would be a part of that leadership team. That being said, when as a normal practice for your firm, what types of kind of meeting schedule would you implement as far as regular meetings with the owner of the business and with the rest of the team as well? Is there a set cadence that you guys prefer, or is that something that the owner really kind of drives?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my favorite answer is it depends.
That's my favorite answer too.
Yeah, right. It totally depends on the business owner and the stakeholders. So, and also the position that you're in. So if you're in like a turnaround situation, for example, you're going to want to meet at least weekly to discuss, at minimum, your cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in like a high growth mode and we're going through maybe an acquisition, we would also want to meet weekly. But if we're kind of at like a set cadence and, maybe it's a lifestyle business that you want to keep going for some of our clients, we can probably meet on a monthly basis to review your financials, review your KPIs, make sure we're still in line with strategy, and to talk more on what we've hit and missed in terms of our forecast for kind of like maintaining that zero growth mode. So yeah, it depends on kind of where you're at. We do offer a suggestion and say, hey, this is kind of what we're seeing. We would prefer if we could meet weekly, and here's why. And then we'll also say, if you want to meet monthly, here are the pluses and minuses of that. And then we'll allow who we're working with to kind of make that decision from there.
Gotcha. So KPI development, like from a standpoint of, we come in, we kind of install all these systems and SOPs or what have you. We help them develop the KPIs. The CFO, may track those KPIs. What types of systems are you working with? The baseline systems that are already in place? Do you recommend employing different types of software in order to track KPIs? And from a larger standpoint, how do you actually share those KPIs with the business owner? I mean, is it on, and the cadence for that? Is it on a weekly basis? Are we looking at sharing KPIs just through a normal monthly report? Kind of talk a little bit about, the analytics around KPI reporting and that sort of thing.
Yeah, first and foremost is to meet with the stakeholders and the business owners themselves to say what's important to you in terms of what you want to track. Cash is always number one. And then also what's important to the industry. So whether it's likelihood of having recurring clients, do we have the ability to upsell those recurring clients? Can we track that? Is it gross margin? Is it EBITDA growth? Is it year-over-year growth? Those are the types of KPIs that we're trying to determine are important, but then also industry standard KPIs. And then we will typically meet monthly on them. unless it is a KPI that is agile enough to be updated more frequently. But typically a lot of KPIs are dependent on the closure of the books. Your accounting books is what I'm alluding to. And so we'll want to meet as soon as your books are closed and we've updated the accounting, and then we can update the KPIs from there.
Okay. Mike. Michael
Merrill, you have a hand up.
Oh, maybe he never lowered it.
That never went down from before for some reason.
Oh,
It's
okay.
gone now.
And then we've
All
got Brandon as well.
Brandon, there you go.
Yeah, thanks. Chelsea, good to meet you.
You know.
Brandon Gardner. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I would love to hear from you. You know, is going out and buying a business right now, do have goals, but what should I really be thinking about as I'm starting that company or buying that company? You know, going to be in this for 5 years. I'm going to be assuming, I'm just assuming 5 years. What should I really be thinking about from day one for a liquidity event in 5 years? Yeah.
So with kind of 2023 is kind of one of those years where a lot of people have just like their shoulders up, like, I don't know what's going to happen, and economists as well. And so kind of the advice that we are giving is that you want to make sure that your annual recurring revenue of your target acquisition is consistent, if not growing. The cash flow is consistent, if not growing. And then the ability to leverage additional capital is there. So I say all of that because purse strings in general have been tightened, especially in the VC community. And so the likelihood of being able to receive additional runway from that community is pretty low. And so you want to make sure that any kind of runway or cash flow that you have is going to sustain you from anywhere from 18 to 24 months. That's definitely what I would look out for as you're looking at different acquisition targets.
Okay. So thank you for that. So the ability to leverage additional capital, whether it is an investor or whether it is some type of line of credit of some sort that you can take advantage of in those. So to that question then, annual recurring revenue is either consistent or growing, cash flow consistent or growing, obviously for sustaining the business. But from day one, like what do I need to set up in the books themselves, in the business themselves, that in 5 years from now, when a strategic buyer or someone's looking at buying the company, they're looking at and going like, oh yeah, I'll pay 5x or I'll pay 10x for that business.
Oh yeah. So that's another, depending on the industry, you're looking at MRR. So monthly recurring revenue is what's going to drive your multiples there. Because they are looking to make sure, again, that cash flow and recurring revenue is a potential for when they purchase the business, or even if they kind of want to take it for nuts and bolts. So you want to set up your P&L to show that MRR or ARR is consistent or growing. So is your revenue and your cost of goods sold broken out appropriately so that we can totally tell very easily with just a quick glance what your margins are on a monthly basis? That would definitely be something to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're starting to really get into, when you think about it from that perspective, what Chelsea's alluding to is the more transparency you have all the way through your financials, the more you're probably going to be able to sell that business for, given that business has performed. So in essence, if your accounting isn't set up correctly, that could hurt your valuation if they can't really see through. If you don't have segmented financials where you've gotten your financials broken out by product so that you can see product gross margins versus just an overall company gross margin, that might not be helpful to a buyer. So working with someone at that CFO level like Chelsea's firm would allow you to kind of define kind of how you want to set that up. Now, most of you are buying home services companies, but even when you look at home services, you could have different aspects of home services that you really want to be able to kind of see through when you're looking at your P&L, whether that's your service component versus your installation component versus if you're selling HVAC equipment that probably should be segmented. But working with a CFO will allow you to kind of have that conversation and determine what level of granularity you need to have within your financials that a potential investor might want to see way down the road.
Great. So what I understood or heard from that is lots of transparency with detail in product lines, so that it's very visible what is happening. But then I guess what I also understood from that is that don't run it as like maybe a lifestyle business where you're running your boat through it or something like that, where it's, more,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, never do that. I have horror stories of doing accounting cleanups where someone has used it as like their personal piggy bank, and it decreased the value quite a bit. To basically say like, oh, my wife's Escalade is on here, and then I've got all of my kids' laptops that I'm running as fixed assets, and it's wildly inappropriate, and two, it's going to hurt your value of the sale of the company.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we come to those SDE adjustments. That's why small businesses are sold on seller discretionary earnings, specifically because of that. They run a lot of expenses, personal expenses through their business. They may be overpaying themselves. They, whatever is going on in the business has to be adjusted for upon sale of the business. So that's why you see that at an SDE level for smaller businesses. Whereas when you get up to more mature middle markets and larger companies, everything's driven off of EBITDA, because those numbers for the most part can be trusted, because you're not technically, theoretically, you're not running personal expenses through there, or the board of directors is probably going to fire you. That's a good point though, Brandon. That being said, it's more specifics. Let's talk about a little bit about, I noticed one of the services in your under FP&A that you offer is, and which I think is very important, and it's one of the keys that I always look at in terms of my own acquisitions, is the CAC and LTV calculation for customer acquisition costs and long-term value of customer. Now, most of the data that comes through that isn't necessarily coming through your accounting system. It's probably a lot of it is coming through your CRM, your sales tracking system. So do you guys actually get involved with taking a look and pulling data from the CRM system to do that type of analysis, or is that something more that the customer has to have someone on staff that can pull that information and then somehow upload it into the accounting system so that you do have access to it?
We're more than happy to work within Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever you're working with in terms of your CRM, to be able to pull that data. Now, data is only as good as the person utilizing it and inputting the information. So as long as it's good data, it's verified, then we can definitely pull it and generate those values, that CAC and LTV for you. If it's bad data in, the saying is you get bad data out. And so at that point in time, we're going to try to kind of create our own directionally correct model based upon, working with the business owner to say, well, I know that last year we sold like these contracts, here's the proof of these contracts. Here's how much they're worth. None of them have churned, and that I've had them for 36 months. Then we can kind of make a best guess model. But what we really want is good data coming out of your CRMs like Salesforce and HubSpot.
Okay. So is there any recommended financial package, CRM package, reporting package that you guys think for businesses of this size makes the most sense?
Honestly, you can use Monday.com as a pretty decent CRM for, not a lot of cash. There's a free version of HubSpot out there where you can actually pull some pretty decent reporting. But again, that relies on you going in and manually inputting how much your deal is worth, as opposed to if you got the enterprise HubSpot version, which is crazy expensive. It's a bit more automated from there.
Okay. Accounting packages itself, what are the best accounting packages? So if I buy a company and the company is using, which I've seen, and I'm not joking, I've seen actually companies out there still using green ledger paper, or people writing down information in notebooks. So I've seen it all. But if I was to buy a company, kind of what would be your recommendation around like just the base level accounting packages to start with?
Yeah, so base level without like throwing out names, you're definitely going to want something that is cloud-based accounting system. So what comes to mind there is going to be QuickBooks Online, Xero, NetSuite if you're more on the manufacturing side. You can even do FreshBooks, they're pretty decent. Any of those really, we're going to be able to access your books online, connect all your different streams, so your credit cards, your bank accounts, so that you can have a live view of your income and expenditure at the same time. That's going to be my recommendation, especially for a small business. If you're keeping it on Excel, I get it. People do it. Try not to, because I think the cheapest version of QuickBooks Online right now is like $15.99. So there's really no reason not to have it.
Yeah, yeah. No, for all us Excel jockeys, though, we're like, man, we can create something better than QuickBooks now.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course, you know, you miss one little number in there, totally tells your total accounting package out of balance, and you get this unbalanced balance sheet. All right, well, very cool. Moving up the line, Jeff Johnson, you have a question?
Yeah, quick question. So it was in regards to the new product and services modeling.
Yeah.
So often, let's say we model something out, pro forma it out, forecast it out. How often are we going back and looking at that data to say, hey, you know what, the times have changed. Perfect example, maybe 2018 to 2019, right? 2020 to 2021. 22 to 23. How often is the team going back, reforecasting, and providing suggestions on how to tweak the current path and or how it should be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, if it's truly a forecast and not so much a pro forma, because pro formas are highly dependent on the business or service itself, like remaining the same. So, if you are adding additional service lines or you're adding an additional product, that original pro forma probably isn't going to be as helpful anymore. But if you are truly forecasting, that's pretty agile, where you can reforecast on a monthly basis to say, ooh, I've added this new product. It should sell for this dollar amount. And I can reasonably say I'm going to sell this amount per month. That's easy enough to add in as an assumption. And then you can reforecast monthly. That's the beauty of forecasts, is you probably should be building them as, and this is how we do it, it's a rolling 12-month forecast. So each time you close your books, we're able to take that data, dump it into the forecast, and then it will then reforecast out an additional month. So always 12 months, you're looking into the crystal ball. And if you need to play with some of your assumptions, so let's say that you've got a line of credit and it increased from 10% to 20%. Well, that's an easy assumption to go in and tweak within your model to then make sure that it's still consistent with how your business is running.
So when those things are tweaked within the model, does your organization provide the suggestions on how to be agile with the current, like, you know, the economic state, things of that nature? Or is it just like, hey, you know what, red flag, hope everything goes well?
No, yeah. So we're always looking at cash, because without cash, the business isn't going to run anymore. So we will say like, hey, our bottom, threshold is going to be, let's just say 3 months of runway. Once we hit that bottom threshold, then that triggers an immediate conversation of what do we need to do in order to cut expenses or increase revenue? Cutting expenses obviously going to be the easiest. Do we need to reduce headcount? What software or technology packages can we get rid of? Can we refocus our current product and service offering to be like what our core really is, so that we're not spending too much money on these additional products and service offerings? So that is definitely something that we offer in terms of that strategy, and you have to. We wouldn't be good strategists if we just kind of allowed you to hit the floor in terms of that cash line.
Cool. That's what I was wondering. Like, are you going to tell us before the bus comes, or just like, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. No, we're going to let you get below that red line and be like, have a good time.
Okay, cool.
By the way,
Appreciate
don't
it.
get ran over by that bus.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
That's just right in front of you right now. Sorry, we didn't tell you about that. So getting part of that, I would assume kind of what's your typical, like, if you're going to be doing a rolling forecast, which is obviously the best way to do that, but kind of like what's the timeline of like to close the books every single month so that this reporting kicks in, the updated forecast kick in, so that the AE/business owner is updated in the most timely manner possible.
Yeah, if you can get your books closed by the 5th business day, that would be awesome. You know, the latest, I would say the 15th of the month. That way, as soon as that closure is said, we can take that data, put it into the forecast, immediately then have that strategy meeting. Because the longer you wait into the month, then the data it's not going to change per se, because like your accounting month has closed, but perhaps there's a new I guess opportunity that's presented itself that we need to take advantage of quickly. So we want to be on that as soon as possible.
So are you guys depending on the bookkeeper to do that closing, or are you guys, let's just say you guys have a bookkeeper who's actually doing the closing for, let's just say we'll use my company as an example. Do I have a bookkeeper from you that's doing the close, or is it just my hired bookkeeper that's doing the close and letting you guys know at that point, hey, the books are closed?
Yeah, so if it's us doing it, and we're kind of like doing the full stack of our services, we'll then immediately have a conversation internally. So I would say to my CFO, hey, Matt, I finished this client, go ahead and pull the numbers and, schedule the meeting with Rich to discuss his financials and to have a strategy meeting.
Okay.
If it is your team that's closing it, we're often checking, hey, how's the close coming? Do you have an estimated date? When can we expect to be able to pull the numbers? We definitely can get annoying for sure, but our work is then dependent on your team. And so we can definitely kind of like facilitate making sure that happens in a timely manner.
Okay. All right. Ben, Philadelphia. Ben. For some reason you're there. Philadelphia popped up.
Hey, what's up, Rich? How are you?
Hey.
Chelsea,
Good.
how are you?
I'm good, Ben. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And I like all cookies for the most
Oh,
part.
very good.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I like them all. So 2 questions. One, as the business owner, right? I have these things that are in my head, right? That I say, hey, you know what? These are things that I need to get, that I want to have a better understanding of within my business and around my business, right? So I guess the first question is, do you take that information and then say, okay, well, you know what? Let us evaluate where you're at and then come up with a strategy of saying, well, Ben, you know what? You got these 5 things you want to do, but we think you need to reprioritize, but then add this as number 1 and this is number 3. That's the first question. The second question, if you don't mind me asking, is that around the merger and acquisition consulting, right? Do you help the business owner determine, or at least put in the proper frame or context? Okay, here is the potential mergers and or acquisitions you should be looking at down the road based on what you're currently doing today. So those are my 2 questions.
So the first question being, if I heard that correctly, do we assist you in saying, these are what is important to you, and then also this is what's important to the industry, and like, do we marry those things for you? The answer is yes. We want to understand what you are really keen to focus on, but then also kind of like pull you back a little bit and say, hey, don't forget about these other things, because it can be really easy for all of us to not be able to see the forest for the trees and vice versa. And so we want to make sure we kind of pull you back, have that 40,000 foot view and say, don't forget about these other things. Because if you're only focused on like sales team performance, or sales growth goals. Well, that's great, but we also want to make sure that we are looking at internal churn amongst the teammates. Because if we lose a particular teammate, maybe there goes like, I don't even know how many dollars in terms of a book of business. So we're making sure you are focusing on what we know to be important in terms of the industry, and then also, what you've said is important to you too, and then kind of listing out like, here's top priority, here's second, and so on.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes.
You kind of alluded to it in your descriptor of it to me. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely what would happen.
Okay. All right.
And then in terms of M&A and us kind of saying like, what would be good for your portfolio? The answer is yes, we would make those suggestions in terms of what would be good for your portfolio, but we're not going to do it without, consent from you. So we are members of your team, we are paid members of your team, but we're also not trying to overstep our boundary, because we're not necessarily a hired maybe equity holder within your company. We instead are just going to make sure that you are growing to your goals, you're hitting your metrics, and that we are continuing to grow you in the way that you want to go. If you're like, you can make X amount of suggestions a month, or can you go research a couple of these types of targets? Do you have any suggestions? Absolutely. Or you already have like 3 targets in mind and you want us to do like a quick analysis? Sure, we can give you a ranking of best, middle case, and worst.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Speaking of which, so most people on this call, Ben is an exception. He's actually has purchased a business. So he's looking to acquire a second business now. Most people are either they've acquired a business and sold it. Now they're looking to acquire a business now on their own, another business. Or they haven't acquired a business yet, and this is their first run at it. So they're individual buyers. This question is more geared towards someone like Ben who has a business. And let's just say he's going out and he's buying the next business as an add-on to his current company. Do you guys, and this is, forgive me, some of you guys, because this will be, it may not make sense how I ask this question, but well, I'll ask it anyway. Do you guys do what I would call synergetic analysis, meaning like, say we're looking at company XYZ to integrate into our company now? Could you model out the potential synergies within that acquisition if we used our back office versus theirs, if we merged the sales forces, or if we decided to cut one location once we buy the business because we're already located there? Do you guys do kind of like modeling of the synergies of a transaction like that? Or is that something that's really still falling to the company and whoever, whether that's us working with Ben to actually do something like that?
Yeah, that's a really fun question. So if I understood that correctly, like, would we, perform an analysis on if 2 companies could merge well together, and what we would suggest post-merger? Is that right?
Yeah, kind of what that post-merger entity would look like with all the adjustments and all the synergies implemented.
Yeah, so I would say that we would have difficulty and probably wouldn't be best suited to model synergies where it comes to like the human element. So if it's a company who functions, kind of as like a dictatorship, so to speak, and we're going to immediately remove that figurehead and we're just taking everyone else underneath, and then your company is kind of like more of the democracy, would we be able to model that kind of like join? Probably not, because that it's not really more on the financial realm. Could we model like which accounting system would be better because there's like 2 totally different product offerings? Yep, no problem. Could we model, your example, Rich, of locations? absolutely. We would look at the profitability of locations. Which one would be best to keep if we wanted to keep all of them, or if we, simply didn't have enough cash flow in order to keep them, which one would be the best to cut? Would we be able to model like the different product and service offerings? Like, should we keep them or not keep them for the acquired target? Absolutely. Anything that would be financially driven, we could model out in terms of synergies, but anything that comes with like that kind of like human element component, probably
Yeah.
not.
Okay. We have a question from Stefan who typed it in. I suppose in your position as close partner to many businesses, do you actually have early knowledge when an owner is preparing to sell his business? If so, what would be your advice on what we should pay attention to when looking at the P&L of a company for sale? I'll start this, Chelsie, before I let you jump into it. So when you're looking, obviously, a lot of you guys, I talk to you, one-on-one, and there's questions that I ask. The more that you talk to me, the more you understand kind of what I'm focused on when I'm looking at a P&L. But in general, and I'll let Chelsie kind of give you the meat of probably some high-level things to look at. But in general, obviously, a couple of things that I'm looking at. Number one are, the revenue trend line. Where's the business going? Is it healthy? From that standpoint, in terms of customers, looking at the margins on the business, gross margins of the business. I'm looking at the EBITDA margins of the business. A couple of things that I'm looking at also is I'm looking at kind of the customer acquisition strategy, which doesn't come through necessarily through the P&L, but that's something I would expect you to get an answer for as far as how are they acquiring customers, how many customers they have, what's the average ticket size of a customer, how much does it cost to actually acquire that customer. Just from those 5 pieces of information, I can actually kind of come to a conclusion as to whether the model is good. There may be some adjustments that you can make beyond that on your own, or there's some opportunities for you to change the model somewhat, but I can tell you right then and there if that business is a good business or not from where it sits currently. That being said, Chelsie, do you have any advice around some things that they should pay attention to from the P&L for a company that puts itself up for sale?
Yeah. So not only on the P&L, because you've definitely touched on those, I would also look at the fixed assets. So based upon the types of companies, Rich, that you had told me that this kind of like group is looking at, if it's a company that has a lot of inventory or fixed assets, I want to make sure that those have been accounted for properly. So is there a depreciation schedule attached to it? Do they own anything? Are they saying that this truck from 95 is still worth $100,000, but we all know that a car from 95 is not worth that? I want to look at those things because that's a huge valuation like trigger, I guess, for when my company will go in and look at a potential acquisition. Something else that I'm looking at are any of the long-term liabilities that are listed on the balance sheet and who the first lien holder is. And are those going to be settled prior to the acquisition, or is that on me as the person looking to acquire the company to settle those debts? Because again, that's just a reduction in that value. And then if there are, potential like additional lien holders on that, that's a huge issue and huge red flag to acquire that group.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And a lot of this stuff too, when you guys are looking at these, if you don't have that information in the SIM, especially if let's just say you find a business that's not being represented by a broker, a lot of times you may, before the seller will release some more detailed information, you may have to pull in a preliminary offer just to get to that more meaningful information to do a deeper dive on that. But from a standpoint of CFO Share, when you are, let's just say we are a client, we have a business and we are a client, obviously that's a service offering that you guys would kind of have available to someone, like to a business owner who needs that help from that standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you're already a client of ours and you come and say, hey, Chelsie, I'm thinking about acquiring a similar business, looks like they're selling for $750,000. Here are the initial things I know about them. Can you, just take a sniff test to see if it's worthwhile? The answer is absolutely. We'll happily, consult with you to say like, this is a bad buy, this is a good buy, and just make like a quick call. But if you want us to take a deeper dive, actually do a QOE, because you have a letter of intent to purchase out there, that is definitely a service that we offer.
Okay, great. All right. Do you guys have anything else? I don't want to. I can let Chelsie go early. You guys have no more questions? I know she's busy. As a matter of fact, I have inside information. As soon as she hops off this call, she's going to go work out. So,
Supposed to get some snow, so I'm like trying to get it in before I get an additional like 6 inches, like in the next. I think it's like supposed to happen over like 12 hours, which isn't that tough, but I alluded to like the negative. What did I have? Negative 17 degrees, Rich, that we had last week. That
Jeez.
was awful.
Where do you live, Chelsie?
I live in Denver, Colorado.
Got it.
Wow, I feel for you. I know it's actually pretty cold out here in Arizona today too. I think it might be 55 today, which I know for some of you, you're like, yeah, no, but that's cold for us.
My high today is 34. So that's
Ugh,
hilarious. Yeah.
That's not good. Brandon, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm still learning a lot about this. Never bought a small business, but I hopefully will be getting close here soon. Post LOI, like what are the steps that you recommend? Like, is this a financial due diligence? But do I need the accountant, or is it a CFO looking at this? Like who do you need involved? I'm sure there's also legal, because they're going to look at any liens or any of the property. So I know it's a combination, but like what is the type of I know obviously a CFO Share can work on this and everything, but like what is the type of person I'm looking for? What is the background that we're looking for? Is it more of a CFO type, or is it more of an accountant type?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So the way that we deploy like our team to work after like an LOI has been submitted is going to be first a financial analyst, and then second an accountant or even a controller. The financial analyst is going to be the one, kind of like looking at the P&L and balance sheet to say like, do these metrics make sense? And then the accountant and the controller are then going to do the deep dive of saying like, yes, the AR is substantial, meaning they are going to pay it back. Yes, the revenue streams are appropriate and consistent because they match, these contracts. If you just wanted a person with a particular background to do that for you, I would say someone, and they're going to be kind of a bit of a Swiss Army knife, who has accounting understanding, GAAP understanding. So GAAP, generally accepted accounting practices. And then also that person who can read the balance sheet and P&L to say, these are your different ratios that you should be looking at. This one's upside down. This one's also upside down. This one's kind of positive. Therefore, you should probably stay away. So bit of a Swiss Army knife of a human, accounting, but also some financial acumen.
Yeah, and understanding too, Brandon, that to a certain extent, your lender is also going to be very involved in trying to understand what those numbers are. They may turn back to someone like Chelsea's firm or a QOE firm to confirm what is being represented as true in fact, or as true and representative. But a lot of times the lender too will also kind of do their own analytics on the background from that standpoint. They'll actually provide you with the analytics on that as well, once they kind of underwrite or tell you why they won't underwrite the deal. So you'll get a lot of assistance from that standpoint. Obviously, you have us outside of the finance realm, and within the finance realm. I mean, but outside of the finance realm, obviously, beyond the financial due diligence, you've got legal due diligence, you've got operational due diligence, you've got even HR due diligence. If there's technology involved, there's technology due diligence, meaning like if there's an IP or anything like that, you definitely want to have that research. So there's a lot of aspects outside of just the finance piece, which is probably not appropriate for CFO Share, but within the finance piece, I'm sure they can definitely help if you guys are interested in kind of having them kind of help you through the post LOI process. And obviously you guys have me here too. So
Yeah.
which is, I think
Focusing on that.
the biggest gift you could ever have. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. No, go ahead,
Love how
Brandon.
confidence is coming out.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is particularly to the finance. Like what particularly, coming out of that, do I need to be asking for to make sure that we're speeding that up? So the lender, I'm getting everything for the lender, that we're moving fast. Like what is it? Maybe even the LOI saying, all right, this stuff needed to come quickly, fast.
Yeah, so within that LOI, I more often than not will see language in it that says, you must provide the 12-month financials month over month in an Excel document, within 5 days of signing the receipt of this letter of intent. That way, that then individual is held to that standard to send those things to you in a very timely manner. And that's super helpful to keep, especially if you're going into that quality of earnings chunk, keep that moving along quickly.
Yeah, and usually Brandon will provide you with an extensive due diligence list, and part of that, well, you can attach, the financial piece as an appendix to the LOI, so basically outlining exactly what you need and within that time frame that Chelsie just pointed out. So that's always helpful.
Rich, you already got it done. We're good then.
Well, Chelsie, I wanted to thank you for all. Let's see, Jeff had one last question.
Yeah.
I promise you, 2-second question.
Okay.
Usually, what's the timeline for you guys to do the QOE for the inventory recognition, balance sheet recognition, fixed assets, securals, things like that? What's usually like the timeline for the business size where it's an acquisition between like 5 and 7 million or underneath?
Underneath 5 and 7 million. If you only want us to go, it's usually a time frame of how far back you want us to research. So if it's only a year of financials that you want us to take a deep dive into, like I would say anywhere from like 7 to 10 business days, if that. If you're looking for us to do, 5 years, for example, of financials to take a deep dive into, I would say like upwards of like 21 to 27 business days. And I say that because not only are we taking that deep dive, but we're also writing up a whole quality of earnings report for you to then read, provide to your lender. A lot of lenders like to see those. And then you can also use it as a negotiation tool with your attorney to then go and say like, hey, I think I should negotiate down the price. Here's why.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, Chelsie, thank you for jumping on it. And by the way, everyone, I actually recorded this one, unlike our business evaluation call we had. I forgot to record it. So it was like, everyone said that was a great call, Rich. And when can I see it? And then I realized I forgot to record it.
Oh no.
So I actually recorded this one, guys. So, but thank you for jumping on, Chelsie. I'm sure I'll provide everyone who didn't get your contact information, I'll provide them your contact information if they want to reach out to you directly. And I appreciate your time, and I'm sure I'll have you back. And obviously, we'll be talking a lot more here going forward based on our earlier conversation. So just wanted to thank you for jumping on, and go have a great workout.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in and asking such great questions. I really appreciate it. Have a happy new year, everyone. It's coming up here soon. So thanks again, Rich, and I'll hopefully see you all soon.
Yep. Happy New Year.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.